Good morning, church. What a wonderful week we've had. What weather we've had. Let's go fishing. When I was growing up, I fished a lot in farm ponds around our farm. And I caught catfish and perch, very much like bluegill. And I used worms and crickets because I could catch crickets and dig worms around the stables, around the barns on our farm. And I used a cane pole with a bobber and a hook and a sinker. Occasionally, I would go with my granddad or my dad to Blood River or Kentucky Lake, where it was rumored there were lots of big fish. But we never caught a lot of big fish. I've never been able to catch fish. The last time I went fishing with Dave Jackson. And Dave, how many fish did we catch? 0. I think I'm bad luck. It was a nice ride, nice company. We have a lot of water around here. A lot of you fish, and some of you may be good fishermen. I had a cabin on the Tombigbee River in Aberdeen before I moved here, and I had a little pier right on the Tombigbee River, and I could not catch over 1 or 2 fish at any outing. I had a cabin here on Wilson Lake. Again, I just couldn't catch fish. My brother-in-law could come and catch fish, but I couldn't catch fish. We have people in this church that can catch fish. Now, not long ago, when it was 18 degrees and there was ice on Wilson Lake, Eric O'Neill sent me a picture. He said, I broke ice and caught this fish today. And it was about that big. He catches fish all the time. Now, Eric took me and my grandson fishing a couple summers ago. All I had to do was get on the boat. He had the rods and reels. He had them baited, and he knew where to go. And we caught fish. He said, all you got to do is throw it out there and reel it back in. You'll catch fish. He knew where to go. He knew what bait to use. And we caught fish because I was with the right person. But I don't usually get that. Now, I'm amazed at Wilson Lake when there's a fishing tournament. Have you ever seen that? My little cabin was close to where they put their boats in, and it sounded like the Indianapolis 500 when those boats took off. They were loud. They've got big motors on there. And the boats are not just colorful. They have big engines. They have sonar equipment. They have depth finders. They have big tackle boxes with all kinds, colors, and shapes of bait. The other thing about fishing is fishing stories. You could call them fishing lies because the fish were always biting last week. You should have seen the fish that got away. I got him nearly to the boat. Had to be that long. But I didn't catch it. The Bible tells a different kind of fishing story, and this is a really interesting story. Peter, Andrew, James, and John were commercial fishermen. They fished for a living. This is what they did. They'd been out all night long, and they came back in, and they had to be tired, dirty. They wanted to go home. They wanted to get something to eat. They wanted to get a nap. They had to repair the nets and clean up the boats. And there was this guy on the shore, and he said, let me borrow one of your boats for a minute. So this guy, Jesus, got in his boat, and he was talking to all these people, and they were trying to get finished and go home. And then Jesus had the audacity to tell them how to fish and where to fish. He said, what did you guys caught last night? Peter said, we hadn't caught anything. We've been out all night long, and we can't catch any fish. And Jesus said, you go right over there and put your nets on that side of the boat. You'll catch some fish. What was Peter thinking? Who is this guy? I've been hearing him talk. He sounds like a smart guy. He might have talked to him and found out he was a carpenter from Nazareth, but he wasn't a fisherman. Well, what do you know? Peter said, okay, if you say so, I'll try it one more time. They went out there where Jesus said to go. They let down the nets, and they caught so many fish they couldn't pull them into the boat. They sent another boat out there. They couldn't pull the nets up. Jesus was the man on the beach. And then Jesus invited Peter, Andrew, James, and John to become fishers of men. That is, telling people what to do to please God and enter the kingdom of heaven. And they followed Jesus that day. Well, there's some lessons we can learn from this story. The first lesson is, why do some people not catch fish? Sometimes we don't catch fish because we don't go out in deeper water. Jesus told Peter, go out there in the deeper water, put out your nets, and you'll catch some. That's where the fish are. Usually the bigger fish and the most fish are not up on the bank. They're out in the deeper water. They may be on a shoal. They may be on a drop-off. In fishing tournaments, the fishermen have already scouted out the territory. They may have looked at the river. They know the topography. They have sonar and depth finders. They know where the drop-offs are. They can even see fish on the screen. But fishermen use all this to see where the fish are. Well, Jesus is teaching an object lesson, a spiritual lesson. We have things we want. We all want wisdom and love and healing and closer relationships and more knowledge about God. We want these things in abundance. We want more love. We want better relationships. We want a deeper knowledge of God. But we don't get these things because we don't go out in the deeper water. We stay on the shore. We don't get out there where it's at. Deep water is where the good stuff is, but going deep takes faith. Deep water is risky. Going to the deep water takes focus and faith. Visibility in deep water is next to nothing. We have to trust the words and the directions of people in the know or specialized equipment to know where to succeed in the deep water. Jesus invites us into the deep end, into the deep water. Shallow water is safe. Shallow water is pleasant. You can see at the bottom. Staying in shallow water is a temptation. It doesn't cost much. It doesn't take a lot of courage. There's not much risk involved. There's some minnows and some little half-grown fish, but they can't feed us. They won't make a meal. You can't fillet those things and cook them in a skillet and have them for dinner. The shallow water is where we start our adventure, but it's not where we finish. The deep water is where the things we want are. More importantly, deep water is where we have to go to get what God has for us, what God wants for us. We may not catch fish because we don't expect to catch fish. Jesus told Peter, go out in the deep water, and then Jesus said, prepare for a catch. Jesus is encouraging the fishermen. Now think about it. Most of you come to church every Sunday, and that's wonderful. But do we come to worship to go into the deep water of worship? Do we prepare for a catch? Do we come believing that a blessing, an invitation, that inspiration is waiting for us? Or do we come because of pressure from a spouse or a parent or a friend, out of habit, to be seen? Expectation is the basis of faith. Jesus said, go out there and expect a catch. We need to come here expecting a blessing, inspiration, words from God, strength. When we say we believe in God, we're not saying we believe in some abstract idea. What we're really saying is we expect something to happen here. God has something for us, for me and for you. We're saying that we're partners with the giver of every good gift. Among those gifts are fruitfulness, a satisfying life, fishing with God forever. And that's why Jesus told Peter, leave the shore, Peter. Go in the deep water, Peter. Expect to catch something, Peter. Expectation is the basis of faith. We may not catch fish because we don't go in the deep water. We may not catch fish because we don't expect to catch fish. And sometimes we don't catch fish because we think we know more about fishing than experts do. We know more about fishing than God does. Peter nearly makes this mistake. Peter could have said, and he did say, hey, listen, we've been fishing all night. We hadn't caught a thing. I just don't think this is the day. We do the same thing. We don't really think we know more than God, but we act like it. We hear what God says, forgive a bunch, love a bunch, help those who need a bunch, worship on Sunday, spend time with God, spend time with your friends and your family, spend time with people who need you, and do more of that. But we ignore God's invitation to catch a boatload of fish because we say to God, by the way we act, I know more about marriage. I know more about healing. I know more about how to be a real friend. I know more about children. I know more about how to be a Christian. I know more about money than you do. I don't think we really think that, but we act that way. Peter, for maybe a split second, almost forgot that God is God. But Peter, at that crucial moment in his life, decided that he didn't know everything. At that moment when he was tired, when he was ready to go home, when he was unsuccessful, he was ready to learn. The story that we've just read is called the miracle of the fishes. But the real miracle of this story is that Peter decided that God is God and that he would live that way, knowing that God is God the rest of his life. And he did. Peter said, "If you say so, Lord, I'll do it." Peter was frustrated, he was tired, he was empty, but he decided that God is God, and then Peter found freedom, direction, success. The God that put the sword on the swordfish and the sail on the sailfish, the big in the whale and the play in the dolphin, the electric in the eel, did that because he's God. And if God can do that, what can God do for us, in us, with us, when we're ready to fish in the deep water? So, love extravagantly, give generously, pray deeply, walk, run with God, live every day to the full, fish in the deep water. God will provide a catch. Amen.